Hi, here we are with our next chapter, chapter 33, and this one is called Mother's Day. The Niatsu POWs had control of the train at every town. On the line, the train squealed to a stop and the men piled off, then piled back on, laden with liberated sake and whatever else they could steal. The journey went on. Sake coursed through skinny bodies, and the men grew rowdier. A lieutenant stood up and, with solemn officiousness, warned the men to behave themselves. He didn't want anyone falling off the train, he said. At about 3 p.m, the train stopped and began backing up. Just as the lieutenant had feared, a man had gone overboard. As the train rolled backward, the errant POW came into view. It was the lieutenant himself, at least 3 sheets to the wind. He was lucky. All afternoon, drunken POWs staggered off the train, but the train didn't stop for them. They had to find their way. Oh boy. From the top of Japan to the bottom, trains packed with POWs snaked toward Yokohama. Men pressed their faces to the windows to catch their first glimpse of what all of the B-29s had done. Once grand cities were now flat, black-stained. Their only recognizable feature, a grid work of burned roads, passing nothing, leading nowhere. At the first sight of destruction of their enemy, the POWs cheered. But after the first city, there was another, then another. City after city razed, the survivors drifting about like specters, picking through the rubble. The cheering died away. On Louis' train, the silence came as they passed through Tokyo. A week after Louis had left Omori, 16 square miles of Tokyo and tens of thousands of souls had been immolated by B-29s. A few of the trains slipped past Hiroshima. Virtually every POW believed that the destruction of this city had saved them from execution. John Falconer, a survivor of the Bedtime death march, looked out as Hiroshima neared. First there were trees, he told historian Donald Knox. Then the leaves were missing. As you got closer, branches were missing. Still closer, the trunks were gone. And then, as you got in the middle, there was nothing. Nothing. It was beautiful. I realized that this was what had ended the war. It meant we didn't have to go hungry any longer or go without medical treatment. I was so insensitive to anyone else's human needs and suffering. I know it's not really right to say it was beautiful, because it really wasn't. But I believe the end probably justified the means. At 7 that evening, the Niatsu train entered bombed-out Yokohama and stopped at the station. Welcome back, boys. Before me, in immaculate khaki uniform and cap, stood an American girl with a magazine cover smile, faultless makeup, and peroxide blonde hair, wrote Tom Wade. After 3.5 years in prison camp, I had been liberated by the great American blonde. The POWs were soon blissfully enveloped in Red Cross nurses, some of whom cried at the sight of them. Perhaps the women weren't all beautiful, but to Ken Marvin they looked like goddesses. Someone spotted a mess hall and a charge ensued. In the midst of it stood a journalist, Robert Trumbull. He called out, asking if anyone had a story to tell. As he hurried past, Frank Tinker told him